Hello, elements. This is Mrs. Campbell. I hope you guys are doing well and you're ready to hit the ground running this week on a new lesson in social studies. The lesson is going to be about the Reform era of the 1800s. I just wanted to kind of say hello and have you see my face, but I'm going to go ahead and click off of here. And the goal of this introductory video is to help you understand the topic that you're going to be learning about a little bit more, and also the assignment and the expectations of you with this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. When you come to the post in Schoology for this lesson, obviously you already figured out to get to this YouTube video to give you an introduction. But let's take a look at how I've designed the lesson so that you understand it. What is our learning target? That's something we've always started with in Schoology, so this is nothing new. But for this week, it says I can analyze and interpret primary and secondary sources to explain the main ideas and contributions of key people associated with the abolitionist and women's suffrage movement. So those are the two areas of reform that you're going to be taking a closer look at. These were the reform movement that took place during the presidency of Andrew Jackson in particular. If you remember, he was one of the last pieces in history that we studied in previous weeks. And he was someone who believed in the common man and believed that regular people should have more of a say in government. So it's interesting that this would also bring in a time period of people who were willing to look around America and say, well, what needs changed? What can we do better? And how can we bring about that change? So that's what really this lesson is all about. Now, step 2, I list some of the resources that I'm going to provide you to help you gain background information, gain an understanding of what this reform era was all about. I've provided articles and video clip links that will help you better understand the people and the events that took place in this time period. Those are all at the bottom here. So you will see several articles and video clips that highlight not only the abolitionist movement and the women's suffrage movement, but some of the other areas of reform. The Seneca Falls Convention, Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, and even Mrs. Colson will do a read aloud about the background and life of Sojourner Truth, a key reformer from this time period. So those are the resources that we've pulled for you to help you learn the information about the reform era. The next step, step number 3, engage with the lesson. Now it's time for you to go ahead and start using the information that I'm presenting to you in a variety of ways with the resources provided. You're going to open up a notes organizer that will help you work through some of the resources and highlight important information by typing it into that document. Step number 4, you will apply what you've learned. Now, in this part, you're going to have a choice. Notice that it says you would go to post number 3 if you want to do choice A, and you'd go to post number 4 if you want to do choice B. I will be going over each of those choices to better help you understand what the expectations are so you can make a better decision about how you'd like to show me what you've learned from this lesson. Step number 5 says enrichment, and notice the word optional. It's not something you have to do, but I know some of you like a challenge, so I've provided a Magic Squares review challenge that basically just asks you questions and sees if you were paying attention through your lesson and can complete the Magic Square assignment. The last step, I've provided information about where you can go to ask questions when you get stuck or confused about something, and how I'm providing extra help this week, so that you are never at a loss of what to do or how to proceed if you get stuck. I hope you always know that I'm right here and willing to help. This shouldn't be, bugging your parents, and expecting them to answer the questions. It should be coming to me, your teacher, and I'm more than happy to help you with that. Okay, so that is how I laid out the lesson. Let's go ahead and just take a quick look at some of the various pieces in here so that you understand what to do. Step 3, engage with the lesson. When you go to post number 2, you're going to open up, and I have it up here already opened, a notes organizer. Now, we've done these over the course of this year. Basically, I am asking you to look at information about some of the key people and what was important about 2 of the areas of reform. One was the abolitionist movement, and the second page is about the women's suffrage movement. Notice on each page, you're just typing in information that will give you a better understanding of the importance of these areas of reform and the key people who brought about those changes. At the top of each of those 2 pages, I've linked the sources that you need to use to find the information. A reminder: do not do a Google search to answer these questions. Totally not necessary. If you use the 2 sources at the top of this page, you're going to have everything you need to answer these questions and put key details by each of these bullets. For instance, the abolitionist movement, here it is right here. It's an article. Very easy to understand, nice big bold topics for you to find the information that you're supposed to be looking for. What was an abolitionist? What were their beliefs? And who were some of the key people who persevered, put themselves on the line, and tried to make a difference to end slavery? I'll also provide the second source is a Google Slides. So it will go over some key vocabulary, introduce you to some of the key people, and just provide some images and information to help you also fill in the notes organizer. When you go to the second page, again, this time there's an article about the suffrage movement and again, a Google Slides set. So to briefly show you what those look like, all of the answers you need are right here. When you're looking at the suffrage movement, that word means the right to vote. And that was one of the key efforts of these people who were behind the women's rights movement. But in addition to that, there were some other inequalities for women during that time. So you're going to read about some of the rights that were denied to women and who some of the key people were who stepped up to try to make changes in those areas. Again, you'll see another set of Google Slides that will go over key people, and in this particular case, a key event: the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention. You're going to read about why that was important and what they accomplished at that Women's Rights Convention. So if we go back to the lesson instructions, once you finish with that notes organizer, go ahead and submit that. And then in step 4, this is where you have a choice of how you're going to apply what you've learned. So we go beyond now the notes organizer and you demonstrate what you've learned in a way that makes you think a little bit more. In choice A, it's called a reformer quilt piece. So if I take a look up here, I'll show you what that is. That's basically a Google drawing, and you are going to choose one of the reformers from your notes organizer and complete a quilt template on that person. I've given a series of questions that you answer in the corners. You'll insert and find a picture of your person. You'll hopefully come up with some creative pictures or symbols that connect to your person that you can add onto your Google drawing. Just make sure you backspace over the directions and instead insert those pictures or symbols. You're going to be maybe needing to do additional Google search for this one if you want, but there still is plenty of information from the video clips, the article, and the Google slide that I provided that should give you plenty to work with in this Google drawing of your reformer quilt template. When you're finished with this, submit it, and that's basically it for your application of the lesson. The other choice that you were given is a primary source analysis. So that looks like this when you open it up. And I've provided several links that you will use to find your information. And you're simply going to be answering some questions that force you to analyze that primary source. This one is the source is the Declaration of Sentiments. This was the document that they created at the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. So if you want to know a little bit more about where the women's rights movement started and what they were trying to bring about in terms of change, this would be something that I would suggest you focus on, maybe instead of the reformer quilt piece. One of the links will take you to the document itself, the Declaration of Sentiments. Now, I'm going to be honest, some of the wording is advanced vocabulary, but I think that you will be able to get through it with some of the hints that I give in the primary source analysis directions. You're going to find that there's some similarities to the Declaration of Independence in how this document was designed. The format of it, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary, that's very similar to the way the Declaration of Independence sounded. But then you'll be asked to look at, if you remember in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote a whole list of grievances against the king. Well, in this document, they write a list of grievances of how men were not treating women fairly. It says right here, the history of, let's see if I can highlight it with here. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward women. That's basically saying that in the course of history, men have not always treated women fairly. And then they go on to list some of the ways that they have not been treated fairly. And in this primary source analysis, you'll take a closer look at that and see what were the goals of these women. What did they include in the document to try to show this is what we want changed? This is what we want to make better. And then you'll notice almost 100 people signed that document, both men and women who were at that convention. So if you want to do the primary source analysis, you'll be looking closer at that document and investigating it and coming up with some, I think, thought-provoking questions to help show me what it is you learned about that document, about that event, and how important it was to starting the women's rights movement. When you finish it, I do give a few extra resources, just if you're interested, that tell you a little bit more about that event in history. Now, the final step that I have on here is the Magic Square review. Again, that is optional. You can do it if you want an extra challenge. It's not something you have to do if you feel like, okay, I've done the notes organizer and I've picked my how I'm going to apply my lesson. That's enough, Miss Campbell. And I'm okay with that. But sometimes students like a little bit extra. They like to challenge themselves, and this will certainly do that for you on the reform era. Okay, if we go back to the very first thing, the last thing, like I said, was I'm here for questions, and I've shown you a variety of ways that you can contact me if you have questions. Make sure you attend my Zoom meeting for your class. Sorry, the jets are flying over. And after you finish this intro video, go ahead and start with the Reform Movements Overview video clip. I think that's about 5 minutes long, and I think it's a really good start to this time period and before you dive into your lesson. I hope you learn a lot from this lesson. I think it's interesting in that it shows a variety of people who are willing to step up when it's not so easy and make a difference in America for something that's important and a needed change. Okay, guys, take care.